Costs money. We don't have that. We don't have that kind of money. Oh, okay. Call to order. Pledge allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mr. Bordenero. Mr. Geit.
Here.
Mr. Holmes. Mr. Lamaglio. Mr. Lamaglio.
Yes, yes.
Mr. Paradis.
Here.
Mr. Richards.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay, the rules of the public hearing. After presentation and the audit, there will be an audience of citizens. We have a sign-up sheet here. If anybody wants to sign up, right now we could come up and sign. I will recognize the citizens who signed first. After the citizens that have not signed, you could raise your hand and I'll recognize you. Once you've been recognized, please step to the microphone, state your name and address. Please keep your remarks brief and to the point. Citizens who wish this a second time will have to wait when everyone is done to speak, and speak only on the budget. We'll probably give you around 3 minutes to speak. Welcome to our budget meeting. Let me first introduce our members. The Vice Chair, Jerry Paradis, Mark Holmes, who will be late tonight, Sal, who is not here, he has a prior commitment, John Richards, and Kevin Geit. This has been a very difficult year for the budget process because we have a number of hurdles that we had to cross. First, our town debt is quite high because of our bonding and because of previous councils that have bonded tax increases and did not put them in the budgets. These bonds have caught up to us, and now we are paying for them. Another factor is the visiting nurses. They have lost approximately $800,000 this year alone, and a total of $4.7 million in the past 5 years. As you can see, the Board of Finance has inherited a lot of problems in the last 2 years. The Board of Finance has spent countless of hours preparing a budget that we feel will satisfy the needs of Berlin. As a board, we decided not to bond tax increases. The town of Berlin owes approximately $90 million in bonds. And for example, road paving, police cruisers, trucks for public works, general maintenance of our town properties should have been put in the general operating budget and not bonded as it was in the past, which by bonding this is going to pass the burden to the future Berlin residents. Now it's caught up to us, and our bond payment this year alone is $10 million. Next year will be approximately $9 million, and if we continue this, we're going to go back up to $10 million. None of us on the Board of Finance want a tax increase, but we have no choice. We understand that taxes are very high everywhere, and the state is squeezing out every dollar we have. But in order to have growth, in order to have a vibrant town, we must take care of our needs. The Board of Finance is going to ask the town manager tomorrow night to hire a consultant to help us solve the problems of the visiting nurses, which is very important. Our revenues are down, our grand list is flat. In order to get tax relief and manage our bond debt, we need to grow this town economically. The future plans of Farmington Avenue project is in the right direction for this town. We need to create, in my opinion, we need to create sort of like a property association on Farmington Avenue where we could have dialogue with town leaders to help them rent the empty buildings. We need to start thinking out of the box because what we've done in the past clearly has not worked. Obviously, the old ways of doing business is not working, and we need to work with the State Economic Commission, the Speaker of the House, to help develop, for example, the Golden Triangle on the Berlin Turnpike. Years ago, this piece of property was under contract by a major developer that was shut down by a group called RAM, Residents Against the Mall, in a referendum. And we've lost years of revenue, and look where we are now. Berlin is a beautiful town with an excellent school system. We've got a great golf course. We've got Sage Park. We've got Pistol Creek, and we've got other fine town facilities. We need to set aside political rhetoric and work together to solve our financial debt and grow this town and bring in some revenue. And if you look at surrounding towns, that's what they've done. Rocky Hill, Weathersfield, Newington, Southerton, they've all brought businesses. They're all growing, even in this bad economy at the state of Connecticut. They are growing businesses. So this myth that say that businesses are moving out and they're not going to move to Berlin, in my opinion, is a myth. Because if you just drive to Rocky Hill, they're building a brand new school. Their property values are skyrocketing while we're flat in the town of Berlin. What we should do is start an economic revolution. And when our economic plans succeed, Berlin, the heart of the state, will be the envy of surrounding towns. So let's regain our spirit. Let's come together and let's work together. And now Mr. Town Manager will present the town budget.
Good evening. Good evening. The first slide, what we're doing is we're illustrating what the cost of the budget is proposed to the Board of Finance. At this point, the Board of Education has proposed a budget of $45.3 million. The general government side of the budget is at $47.4 million for a total of $92.7 million. The proposed increase is about $4.7 million, or a 5.4% increase. If adopted at its present proposal, it would yield a mill rate of 34.4 mills, an increase of 1.9 mills, or about 5.85%. The budget as proposed by both the Board of Education and the town are budgets that are put together in mind to service all of the community. We try to serve every resident fairly and equitably. We try to put together programs and maintain the programs that the town has come to expect and deserve. The breakdown of the budget is presented here. The Board of Education currently is about 49% of the budget. The general government is about 37% of the budget. Our long-term liabilities, this is what Sam's referring to as our indebtedness, is comprised of bonds, notes, leases, and pensions. And that makes up about 13% of the budget. A target for this would be 3% with a ceiling of 6% of the budget on an annual basis. The charter changed a couple of years ago, and they've split the budget, so it's a bifurcated budget. When it's proposed to the town and they go to vote, you vote for both the Board of Education and the general government part of the budget. In this slide, we show that the Board of Education is about 45.3% of the budget. The town is about 37.9 million of the budget. There's an overlapping part of the budget which services both sides. That includes electricity, insurance, workers' compensation, facilities, nurses, crossing guards, school resource officers, debt service, capital, and financial auditing. And that's about $9.5 million. So as we look at this chart, it's an illustration of where the budget is where each part of the budget is, how much each part of the budget is constituted. If you look on the right-hand side, there's a process that we go through each year to come to a budget. The first part is all the departments come and they put together budgets and they propose it to the town manager. The capital budget goes before the capital committee. They evaluate all of the requests and make a recommendation to the town manager. Once the town manager receives the budget, he sits with the finance director, and we go through and we again look at it, and we may have to make further cuts. At that point, the town manager on March 1st is required to present the budget to the Board of Finance. Once the Board of Finance gets it, they go through it. They have us come in. We meet with them, and they go through sometimes line by line, and they make any modifications they seem fit. This is a summary of how we got to the point in that process. What are the drivers of the budget? As far as receipts go, the majority of our budget, probably 86% of it, is derived from the grand list. Those are the taxes that are placed on all of the properties, either cars, homes, your land, businesses, personal property taxes. That makes up the grand list. Currently, our grand list is not increasing that much. In fact, this year, it's almost flat. The other areas that we get revenues is from state grants. We apply for grants. The Board of Education applies for grants. We get grants from the state of Connecticut. Our Economic Development Commission also applies for grants to fund certain projects and certain programs. We also have user fees. Each year, the town council receives from the town manager a request for approving user fees for our services. If you sign up for the Park and Recs department, you have a fee for the basketball program. If you go to Timberland, you pay to play golf. If you take something down to the recycling center, sometimes there's a fee for disposing of things. So these fees are spread. If you go to the building department, you have to pay a fee for a building permit. Those make up our user fees. We also get income from interest and other types of income. We have a town treasurer who very diligently looks at different ways of investing our money, and we get increased revenues from that. I believe this last year was a good year as far as our investments, so we had a little more income than we did in the previous years. And the last one is we have money in the assigned fund balance. We have fund balance left over, and each year we assign some of that to make up part of the budget. Our expenditures, they come from our operating costs. The operating costs are operating the town hall, maintaining the roads, bridges, providing education to the students, and all the services that we provide through Park and Rec, the library. And so those make up our operating costs. Capital investments. Each year we have to invest in the capital for the town, be it either vehicles, buildings, roads, bridges. We also this year we'll have a capital investment on the Kensington Dam. The dam has been deemed to not meet the state standards, so we're going to have to invest about $1.5 million in fixing the dam. And the last one is we have servicing our liabilities. Again, our indebtedness is a large part of the budget, about 13%, and we have to pay the fees on the debt and also on our leases. We have a large lease for energy, and our defined benefits pensions, which is a legacy pension from previous programs that we had within the town. The grand list, as proposed, is about $2.295 billion. It's flat compared to last year. There was a slight increase. But last year we had a revaluation, and I know several of you came in and talked to us about the revaluation and how much your property values went up based on the revaluation. We have several appeals currently going on, and so when we look at how much the grand list has increased, we also have to take into account where those appeals are going to end up being decided on, and so therefore we feel that the grand list is essentially flat. And it's a graph that shows you since 2015 to currently, it looks like the grand list has grown from $2.176 billion to $2.295. So it's not a great increase in the grand list. The revenue, our revenue sources. Graphically, this shows where our revenue sources come from as far as taxes, use of fund balance, assigned fund balance, our grants, and our user fees. As you can see here by this chart, the great majority of the revenue comes from taxes, 86%. Each year we receive some money from the state of Connecticut. The last few years it's been very volatile. As Kevin says, last year we received a very nice present from the state of Connecticut around Thanksgiving, a reduction in our grants for last year of $600,000. Part of the issue with that is currently we're doing our budget, and our budget will probably be done late April, early May. The state of Connecticut is also going through their budget right now. Their budget process takes a lot longer. We have to make certain assumptions when we anticipate what we're going to get for grants and aid. Those assumptions typically, as we look at them, Kevin and I tend to be conservative, so our assumptions are conservative, so we probably assume that we're going to get a little bit less than maybe is being published. We're not, at this point, we're assuming that because at this point, the state of Connecticut has not decided what they're going to be able to give back to the towns. We've gotten some preliminary information, but this year, already they've come to us and told us that $133,000 of the Teachers Retirement Fund has to be passed back to the town, so we've included that in our budget. Unassigned fund balance. We currently stand at about $12 million of unassigned fund balance. That's about 14.29%. As a rule, we like to be at 11%, so we're above that, and that's good for the town. It shows good financial planning and strategy. That allows us to have a higher bond rating when we go out to borrow money for certain projects and we do bonding. It puts us on a solid balance, and we've worked on this diligently over the last few years. When we get together with the departments, we come up with a strategy of how we're going to invest the money in the town. We need a firm foundation. Kevin has put this in our budget presentation for the last couple of years, and it's one I think is very important to us as we plan and we evaluate requests for funding. Funding to us has to fit into one of these four boxes as far as priority. Our first priority is public safety. Town education. We want to make sure our education system meets the needs of our students and prepares our students to go on and have successful lives. Financial strength. We want to make sure the town is on firm footing. We're making decisions. We're trying to be conservative in what we're doing, watch our bonding, watch our borrowing, and pay off some of our unfunded liabilities that exist, like the defined benefit pension plan, and also invest in our infrastructure. We have 110 miles of roads. Each road should be paved within every 20 years. Otherwise, you fall behind. So we try to turn those over every 5 years. Every year we do 5 miles of roads. That gets us to keeping our roads in good condition. Our bridges have to meet the standards. Within the town, our buildings. You're in a beautiful building that the town put together for you in the last few years. The Public Building Commission managed this project and brought it in, and now it's the obligation of the town to maintain it and continue to invest in it. How do we develop our government budget? These are the areas of new investment. Each year we look at infrastructure, buildings, grounds, roads, bridges, and dams. For school security, in the last year, we've had several sessions, either budget sessions or strategic planning sessions, and each time it comes up that one of the most important items from the town is security. They want school security. There's been money put into the budget this year for school security. There are grants out there that the town has acquired to help fund security projects, including the school vestibules. The other part is economic development. Matt and I were talking just before the meeting here. A lot of what we're talking about is based on a grand list that's not growing that much. At one point, 20 years ago, I was on a board of finance that when we would sit down annually, if we had a 5% increase in our budget, there was no tax increase. The grand list was growing on an annual basis that covered the increase in the town budget. Right now, Berlin's grand list is not growing. That's not just in Berlin. That's a statewide issue, and I'm sure you read about it every day in the paper. So we're trying to plan, invest, and do what we can to meet our budget obligations. Ongoing operations, we have legal, contractual, and regulatory compliance issues in the budget that we have to pay for on an annual basis. We also have legally required long-term debt obligations. Kevin likes to make sure I always remember that one, puts it in nice bright red for us. That includes the bonds, the notes, leases, and the closed defined benefit program. This is how the town's money is spent. We spend money, we put on the general budget side of the ledger. 11% goes toward the schools, 8% goes to health and human services. That's the VNA, that's the senior center, programs in that way. Parks, recreation, libraries, another 12%. We have a very good park and recreation department here. They put on many programs. They have the pools in the summertime, they have basketball, they have many programs for the children, and they use our facilities. Physical services, we maintain the roads. We have the highway department, the buildings department, the grounds. All of the fields have to be mowed. They have to be kept in shape so that they're available for park and recreation programs. The general government, that funds, when you come to town hall, we have to keep the lights on, we have to keep staff going, we have to provide you with building permits, planning and zoning permits, and unfortunately, we also issue our tax bills. Community development, Chris Edge and our Economic Development Commission is working hard. They get 3% of the budget to try to develop and continue to move our town in the right way to increase the grand list. And lastly, public safety, not lastly, but as part of this public safety, that's the fire department, the police department, your EMS, and your ambulance. The general government operating expenses, each year $23 million of it goes toward personnel. Another $10 million of it goes toward operating expenses. That's our building materials, salt, trucks, equipment, fuel. It keeps our equipment going. This year, our capital investments are about $791,000. It's a little less than last year, probably less than we would like, but in a tight budget year, as Sam said, we are in a tight budget. We had to make decisions on how we're going to invest our money. Priorities this year on police vehicles, we are behind in investing in our police vehicles. When we say police vehicles, the vehicles that we replace with the police continue to be used by the town. It's not, once you replace a police vehicle, it doesn't get retired and sold. It gets passed down to other departments so that they can use it. And so that vehicle, by the time we are done with it, it's ready for the scrap heap. We try to sell and get a little bit back. Jim Simons does this every year for us. He looks at all the vehicles, sees where we need them, and which cars should be retired. We're asking for a handicapped door at the community center. As many of you know, we have a new elevator at the library and the community center. So many of the residents or seniors now enter the library by way of the community center. So we need a new, the door there is outdated. It's not in the best of conditions. We're looking at putting in a handicap door so that makes it more accessible to our seniors. Lightning detection. The golf course has a lightning detection system that's inoperable. And you no longer can buy any components for it. In order to run a golf course safely, we need to have a lightning detection system. We had one before. Our golfers expect to have that, so we're asking for $20,000 for a lightning detection system. Repairs at the senior center. The senior center has been there for many years. The kitchen is in need of repair. We want to make sure that we maintain their certification so that they can provide meals to the seniors on a regular basis. Also, as the seniors walk through the senior center, the floors have become uneven. We have some bumps in places where we have had people fall. We want to be able to replace those floors and make it safer for them. The garage roof, and each rainstorm, it rains on the outside of the building, but it also rains on the inside of the building. So we want to put a new roof on there to keep the trucks and equipment and people working there from getting wet during a rainstorm. We are actually on that one. We have applied for a LoCIP grant. We are hoping that we'll receive that grant. If we do, that will fully fund the repair of the roof, and we can either use that, not spend that money or divert that money to another capital program. School phones, we're looking at replacing some of the school phones. Last year, the Board of Education funded the replacement of phones at the McGee School. We are looking at some of the other schools because the systems are getting old and they don't talk together that well. So we're looking at funding a project for that. The highway vehicles, we need to replace a truck. Golf equipment, they need, I'm not sure if it's a mower or if it's an aerator, but we're looking at replacing a piece of equipment there this year, and the grounds department. The liability. This is the bonded indebtedness or the town's liability. General obligation bonds. Currently, we have about $83 million worth of general obligation bonds. We have certain bond anticipation notes bands at about $0.9 million. We have the unfunded defined benefits pension. It goes back. It's a legacy pension plan. That's still at $6.9 million. If we have a couple people retire this year, we need to be able to fund out a payment to them in excess of $1 million so that they can retire with the benefits that they were promised. Capital leases, we signed a capital lease program a couple years ago, which we used to install boilers, solar panels, lights, insulation within many of the buildings for energy savings. That lease is about $12.2 million over the next 20 years. And lastly, Farmington Avenue. Sam mentioned that we have a project planned for the Farmington Avenue property, but we did take some property that is contaminated. We got grants where we have to remediate that property as part of the project. So we have an obligation there about $0.9 million, a total of $104 million, which is 113% of the proposed budget. Typically, what you would plan for is to have about 20% of your budget would be in indebtedness. This is further details on the liability plan. It's a little bit of an eye chart. But you can see it's how it's broken down as far as our obligation bonds, short-term notes, the pension, the energy lease. We pay $700,000 each year on the energy lease and the cleanup costs. Our long-term in debt. The blue line, the blue part of this chart is what we have currently bonded. The red portion on the top is what we're looking at if bonding for fire radio system upgrade. The Scalise Field, we're going to put new turf replacement on that. It's long overdue. The Burnham Street Bridge, shortly in the next maybe next month, the Burnham Street Bridge is going to be closed. I'm sure that'll be a popular thing. But we're going to take that bridge out and we're going to completely replace it. The Railroad Pond Dam, that needs to be upgraded to make it into current standards, and then to roll the existing notes. So the red portion only shows what we're talking about bonding this coming year. If there's bonding going forward in future years, what you don't see on here is that while that graph shows it coming down now, if we add bonding to it next year, that graph will stay steady, and there'll be another color on top of that. So we need to look carefully at each project and see if we're going to bond in, these projects in the future. The idea that we've talked about amongst the people in the Board of Finance in the town is that we want to get away from bonding everything and and try to move toward pay-as-you-go. This is just an illustration of the defined benefit pension plan. If it had been funded previously, then the ongoing normal cost would be what's in purple. The orange is what the past service costs, and that's what we're trying to make up right now, so that as people retire, we have the funds there to pay them. This is the payment plan over the next 20 years for the energy lease. You can see that extends out to 2035. Our expenditure drivers are each year are wages, salaries, education expenses. Refuse disposal went up this year. You're going to probably read a lot about this. In fact, I saw an email before we came tonight where they're going out for another bid on recyclables. The cost of trash is going to go up tremendously in the next few years. It's not the trash portion that's going to go up. It's the recyclables. Recyclables in the past have brought the town's revenue up to between $10 and $25 a ton. We've seen figures now that you'll be paying as much for sending out your recyclables as you do for your trash. The recyclables market has collapsed, and therefore the cost is going to be passed back to the towns. We've put money in this year for the school security guards. You see $400,000. Again, the town, in previous meetings, you've asked for security at the schools. We feel it's a high priority. We've put money into the budget for that. And then we have increase in health insurance. And then we've also shown the teacher retirement system contribution, $134,000. Okay, how does that impact you? If you look at this, in fiscal year 2019, if you had a house with a market value of $250,000, assessed at $175,000 at 70%, the mill rate at 32.5, the tax bill would be $5,688. If this budget was to be approved as presented tonight, the same house assessed at the same value with a mill rate of 34.4 would yield a tax bill of $6,020, or an increase of about 5.8%. The change is annually about $333, $28 a month, or $6 a week. In summary, the proposed budget funds school security. That's been, that's something that's a priority. We tried to maintain the current services and programs at the level that the town has come to expect. It makes limited but critical capital investments. We're looking at cars, roofs, some buildings. It makes necessary contributions to the closed pension fund. We are trying to pay that down, so that will go away in the next few years if we continue to invest and put money into that fund. It addresses declining state grants. We're trying to take that into account. We're planning that there is going to be a decrease in the money that we get from the state. And maintains the tight expenditure controls. In your package, if you get a package from us, there is an outline of the Water Control Commission's budget. I think if you're part of the Berlin Water Control, this is only for the Berlin Water Control, not for Kensington or Worthington. This, you can see where they're, how they balance their budget, and you probably saw that you got an increase this year because they're trying to also invest into their system, line their pipes, and upgrade their pump stations. So where do we go from here? Tonight we have our presentation. Tomorrow night the Board of Finance will meet in the Doc McIntosh room. They're going to take all of your comments into account, the presentations that both the town and the Board of Education are going to make tonight. They're going to look back at the budget, and they're going to vote and make a recommendation to the town council on a budget to go forward. The town council has 5 days to act on that budget. They will be meeting on Monday, April 1st, to review the budget and discuss it and to see what they would like to do with it. On April 2nd, they have their normal meeting. It's at 1:30 in the afternoon at the Senior Center. And I want to make that point. It's not at 7 o'clock at night. It's at 1:30 at the Senior Center next Tuesday. They will be discussing again, and they may possibly taking a vote. If they do not and they want to go one more day to review it, they have until Wednesday, and they have a meeting scheduled for Wednesday, if necessary, to vote on the budget. They can either accept it as presented, they can reduce it, make cuts, or they can reject it, which, if it is rejected, they have to have a meeting immediately afterwards with the Board of Finance to work on a budget, and the joint group has to have 9 people vote in favor of it. The budget referendum is now scheduled for April 30th. And with that, I thank you for your time, and I'll turn it over to Matt and the Board of Education. I'll let you go. Thanks.
Good evening, everybody. I will be presenting the Board of Education budget. There's a number of slides here. For all of the data junkies, there's plenty of charts and graphs, but we'll go through this as quickly as I can for you. So just a couple of introduction slides. We adopted a new, for lack of a better term, slogan for the Board of Education. It starts with purpose, passion, and pride. Purpose, we look to build shared understanding of and commitment to student achievement of the Berlin learner outcomes. Passion, as a district, we cultivate a strong learning culture for both educators and students. And pride, as a district, we strive to enhance community partnerships to support student learning. We're very proud of our schools. You should be proud of your schools. They've accomplished some great things. SAT scores last year in mathematics, Berlin was ranked #1 in our DIRG, our district reference group. In other words, communities of the same size and demographic. Our SAT scores in reading and writing, we were 4th in our DIRG. In our AP exams, we had 386 taken, 84% with scores 3 or above, which means those with a 3 or above on an AP exam means that they qualify for college credit as they move on. And most recently, Willard Elementary School has been named a school of distinction. So again, we have a good, solid school system. We're proud of it. We're looking to maintain it. And as we go through this budget, you'll see that those were some of the requests that the superintendent brought forth for us. And our budget reflects a commitment of the community to invest in the future for our children. The erosion of funding for education challenges the sustainability of Berlin as a competitive school district with rich educational and extracurricular opportunities for our students. So there's my overview. We'll now move to the numbers. This is a graph of the superintendent's proposed budget. His budget was $46,177,844. Of that, 2.3% of it is contractual obligations. Those are the contracts that we've entered with our administrators, our paraprofessionals, our custodians, and our teachers. That alone is $985,000 that is set to move forward. Roughly 2.3% of the superintendent's overall recommended budget. Contracted services at $364,000. $300,000 of that is the ESS program that we've talked about over the we've run it now, this is our 4th year, Brian, is that right? We're 4 years now, correct? 3, 4.
This is our 4th year coming.
We're proposing our 4th year. Each year, we have funded that with dollars that have come out of the end of the year funds because it's been taken out of the budget due to budget reductions. And you will see later that we are proposing that again. Transportation is up 122, utilities is up 122,000. That is our electricity, gas, heat, and so forth, what it takes to operate the schools. Tuitions, at $557,000. That's an increase over what already is in place there. This is our special education tuitions, also tuitions to magnet schools that the district is responsible to pay for. And then last is, the last blue section there is requested new staff requests. Now, I want to be clear that not everything in this category is new staff. It's existing staff that perhaps we put a stipend on because they became coordinators for a department, or in the particular case of some paraprofessionals that were cut out of last year's budget, we lost a arbitration mediation suit with the state, and we were forced to bring them back on board. It is the addition of a guidance counselor at the high school. We cut a guidance counselor last year, and what we found is that the existing staff was servicing in excess of 240 students each, and that workload is ineffective to be able to address the needs of our students at the guidance level. Brian, if I say anything wrong, jump in. Let me just go back for a second here. That black line is probably the most important line on the chart. That is the 5-year average of funding. 1.38% is what the Board of Education, on average over the last 5 years, has received for funding. So if you take the dollars that we've received over each year, you can see how far we get to fund. Everything above the line, we either have to reduce out of the program or find other ways to pay for it. So last week at the Board of Finance meeting, they reduced the Board of Education's budget request by $1.3 million. In order for us to find $1.3 million worth of reductions, we asked Brian Benigni, the superintendent, to go back, look at the budget, and let's look and see what it is that we can reduce. Now, keep in mind, for the last 5 years, we have been reducing staff, we've been reducing programs, we've been reducing support. So, right now, what Brian has brought forth to the Board of Education is certified salaries and employee benefits of about $500,000. That's roughly six teachers for next year. Tuition and transportation. If you can see side by side, we had budgeted $557,000 worth of increases. Most of that is for special education students that have already been identified, but we are optimistic that perhaps they won't need the services as extensive as initially thought, and we are taking $400,000 out of tuition and associated transportation for those students. Contracted services, once again this year, we're going to take ESS out of our budget in hopes to fund it at the end of this school year. If we do not have the funds for that, then it will not run next year. And then supplies, textbooks, materials, district-wide, Brian is made the commitment that he's going to manage $100,000 out of that already. Keep in mind that we've already reduced supplies, textbooks, materials, and so forth, 10% across the board. And that piece of the budget is such a small piece to manage. When you're talking about a budget that's 77 to 80% people, supplies make up a very small slice. I can tell you one thing already is our Nutmeg TV will not be part of our broadcasting next year, although we will be working with the high school to live stream it through our website. So you'll still be able to watch for those few that do watch. It just won't be through Nutmeg TV. I talked earlier about the new staff requests. This is simply, those highlighted in blue are those areas that I talked about that received, that made it into the budget, with the exception of the paraprofessionals that were brought back on full-time this year. So you can see that we have World Language Department supervisors, a CTE coordinator, a PE and health coordinator, fine arts coordinator, an internship and student leadership coordinator. Those are all stipends. They're not people. They're simply stipends to an existing position. We did add one school counselor, and we brought in a business office secretary at 14 hours a week because we reduced secretarial staff last year, and Brian found that the workload was too much for the existing staff. So if you heard me use the term 1.38%. That is the average increase for the Board of Education over the last 5 years. This is a representation of surrounding towns and what they have been funding, their average has been for the last 5 years. I think it's just important to know where we fall and why at this point we're asking for what we're asking for. Had we had higher rates along the way, we wouldn't be asking for nearly as much to sustain. Rocky Hill's kind of the outlier, but I think that that's been addressed with Mr. Lamaglio earlier about their growth and their grand list increases. This chart is a simple mill rate comparison for our surrounding towns. You can see that our mill rate increase average over the last 5 years is 0.66. It kind of falls in the middle of the pack, but if you look at those above us, most of them, you'll see that their grand lists are growing. So that's how they're offsetting tax increases. So this slide is just an indication of what essentially how towns value their education. So while our mill rate is 0.66% average over 5 years, our average increases to the boards of education has been at 1.38. If you look at Farmington at 0.62% mill rate increase, they're allocating 3% of that to their Board of Education. It's simply a representation of mill rates versus what's being allocated to boards of education, and that we're not keeping up. Simple bar graph of our budget funding history. You can see that in 2012, 13, and 13 and 14, we hovered right around that 3%. Our work has shown that that 3% mark is kind of that break even where we can sustain our programs and continue to offer all of the things that we need to our students without, lack of a better term, pain. Over the last 5 years, you can see that we've been well below that. the highest at 1.58%, lowest at 1.09. And you can see that where we stand right now with the Board of Finance reductions, we're at 2.96, 2.98, I think. And that's the trend that we need to be on. Per pupil expenditures, you hear us talk about this all the time. Berlin's per pupil expenditure at $16,457 per pupil, while the state average is $18,243. To be honest, this does become a difficult comparison because we have to keep in mind what the large cities and how they fall into play here. But if you look at the next chart, this is the one that concerns me. 5 years ago, the gap was much, much closer, and it's continuing to grow apart like a funnel. And the more it grows apart, the more difficult it is for us to give our opportunities to our students. Not a surprise, federal funding continues to decline. Same information came from Mr. Healy on the town side. It's getting tighter and tighter, and most of that, in the past, that's how we help subsidize the operating budget is through the use of grants, but as they shrink, so too do the opportunities. We know that there's been questions about the Hartford open choice process. I'm going to let Brian talk specifically to this. But I think it's important that you understand the impact that choice has on the district.
Thank you, Matt. The question's been asked, why do we accept Hartford Choice students and why are we bringing open choice students to Berlin Public Schools? And why would we accept fees of anywhere between $4,000 to $8,000 per student if our funding rate is $16,457 per pupil expenditure? The answer to that is that we have been using those choice funds to offset the budget deficit. So there are teachers currently being paid, teachers that teach Berlin students, and they may teach Hartford students within the budget that we could no longer fund in our operational budget. So over those last 5 years with the 1%, we've used the choice grant funds, the funds that we're receiving, the $8,000. We've been in a range from $4,000 to $8,000. We're currently at 4.65%, which means that we receive $8,000 per student. The difference is we decide, myself makes a recommendation to the board, how many students to accept annually, and we also decide what grade level to accept those students into. That being the case, next year we're accepting 14 students. 13 will be at the kindergarten level. 1 is a sibling of a kindergarten student who would be in 7th grade. So moving forward, we'd like to maintain the 4% because we need the funding to staff our classrooms. That being said, if the public feels that it's not the appropriate program for Berlin, the real question is how do we make up the difference? But to speak to you candidly, I meet every other year with the group, elementary, middle school, and high school separately, and I have a focus interview with them and I have some lunch with them. The students, and think about sending a student who's 5 years old on a bus, 45 minutes each way for an education. Most of the students really appreciate being here from the elementary all the way to the high school. And the high school students will say, we came in, we felt very stupid. We felt two grade levels behind. The teachers here care. I know I'm going to be successful in life. I mean, it has a big impact. But more importantly, I just want the public to know that how the funding works. And let's just say that a student, because it's a lottery, we don't get to pick which students we want. If a student happens to have special needs, Berlin does not pay for those special services. Berlin's liability stops with the $8,000. Everything beyond that is paid for by Hartford. So if there was a student that was attending Berlin Public Schools and they were identified as special education for whatever services they needed, Hartford would pick up anything over $8,000. So if a student was in the district and needed a one-to-one paraprofessional, Hartford would pay for that paraprofessional minus the $8,000. So, a student who might need an outplacement, Hartford would pay for that outplacement. So Berlin's liability is really the $8,000 that we receive. think I covered.
I think you got it.
Yep. And on the second page, Matt, if you just go to the second one, just over the last 5 years, what were the numbers and what do we look to accept this year? And I know I shared with that where we're looking to stay. So we hope to stay at the 4% mark. The 4% mark allows us to have $8,000 per student. One of the issues, we took in a number of students last year, actually 51 students, and the rationale behind taking the students, if we did not take in a large number of students, we potentially would have fell to the 2% mark, which is $4,000 per student, and there would have been a huge deficit within the budget. And I hate to say it that way, but you know, that's the dollars that are tied to the choice students are important to our budget. The other piece is when we take in the students, that differential, just to make sure I'm clear here, the differential between taking in the students, where the students are placed, we look at the number of students at any grade level. So we're not hiring an additional teacher because we're taking 13 kindergarten students. If that was the case, we wouldn't do that. So if a classroom has 13 students and we add 2 choice students to it, we're not adding another teacher. So we're already paying that teacher's salary, but yet we're gaining $16,000 in the budget, if that makes sense. So that's why we don't have to, we look at, it's not the actual per pupil expenditure that you see posted when it's a choice student. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. We talked about state funding. Grants overall have been decreasing, although this slide will show that we have a huge jump, and that is because of the choice grant. Last year, with the addition of those students, we moved from being a reimbursement rate of $6,000 to a reimbursement rate of $8,000, and that goes all the way back to student 1, not just the incremental difference. So that's why you see a large jump here, and also that was a huge help to us operating the schools this year based on last year's budget. Student enrollment. This shows 3 different, shows the elementaries, the middle school, and the high school. And you can see that enrollment in the middle school had declined, but it now is on an upswing. We're starting to see some elementary school students coming back into the district. McGee overall has decreased, as has the high school, but we anticipate based on the enrollment forecast going out for it to stay relatively flat moving out for the next 5 to 10 years. This is what our class sizes look like. You can see that we are anywhere from about 15 students at the K level to as high as 25 students in the 5th grade over at Hubbard. We know that elementary class sizes are at their optimum for teaching if they are 20 or below. We have worked very hard to stay within that range. We know that that's the foundation for success moving forward. But with the reductions that we may be looking at with teachers, class sizes will go up. Somebody's Googling something out there. Again, projections for this year. You can see that there's a net 24 student decrease if you look middle school and high school combined. This is the 5-year full-time equivalent comparisons. This just shows the reductions that have been made over the last 5 years. You can see administrators has gone from 20.6 to 18.6. That is at the elementary level. The elementary school assistant principals were taken out of the budget. Certified teachers have gone from 286 to 264 over the last 5 years. Paraprofessionals is on the rise, and that is reflective of the special education needs of the students. Clerical, you can see, has been reduced. Custodians, we've gone down 1 over the 5 years. You can see it's an increase from last year of 1. Our food service folks, it's a net half-person change if you add the cook managers and the food service, and then unaffiliated has also been reduced over time. So, as I said earlier, we have made reductions over the last 5 years as not only enrollments have decreased, but so too have budgets. And with that, we've taken appropriate action. So what's the impact of further reductions? If the Board of Education budget is reduced below the 2.98%, the Board of Education will have no alternative to make reductions that will negatively impact programs, learning experiences, and opportunities for our students. And here's what, we already had some of these conversations last night. If the Board of Education operational budget is reduced below 2.90%, the following areas will be considered. The elimination of McGee sports at the middle school, the elimination of freshman sports, reduction of JV sports. What I mean by that is abbreviated seasons. Elimination of clubs and activities funded by stipends. That would be K through 12. Reduction or elimination of co-curricular activities, K through 12. The institution of fees. Parking fees at BHS. Pay to participate for co-curriculars, perhaps, lack of a better term, tuition for the preschool pre-models, peer models, reductions in teachers and administrators. We've already put on the board 6 teachers, which will lead to increased class sizes, the number of electives at the high school and exploratories at McGee, and a reduction and the elimination of media specialists and tech integration teachers. This is what we put forth in the budget for site and building. These did not make it into the town's budget. The only exception to that is when we're talking about the security. There is a $400,000 number out there for school security personnel that we've been working with, not only with Jack, but also with the mayor to figure out how to get that in. That is in addition to the proposed and adopted budget for the Board of Education. It is not a number that we had in our budget. It's something outside of that. You'll see, I'll repeat this again. The Board of Education does not feel that we should need to choose between teachers or security. It should be teachers and security. They are of equal importance. Capital equipment, these are dollars that were requested for each of the schools for special education. And this year we put all of our technology in the capital equipment category. Again, this did not make it into the town's budget for consideration. School security, this is what I was just talking about. We've been working collaborative with the mayor and the town manager for funding and determining requirements for these positions. We've had a lot of conversation. We've done some surveys with the town, and we are working to move that forward. It has always been our understanding that the funds would be in addition to the operational budget or reside in a town account, which is, I think, where it sits right now. Depends on what day we're talking about. And then it would be transferred over to the BOE at a later date. Perhaps that's already happened. Jack's giving me the heads up. He's giving me the yes. But again, we do not believe that a choice should have to be made between eliminating teachers and hiring security staff. So what we're saying here is, without a substantive increase to the funding provided to the Board of Education, we can't sustain Berlin as a competitive school district with rich educational and extracurricular opportunities for our students. For any of you who have students who are headed to college, you know that one of the very first things all applications now is, what are you doing besides your grades? We know that it's just as important as school GPA. So I'm going to tell you is we need to break the pattern of the funding that we've had over the last 5 years. We requested a significant amount of money. We recognize that. The Board of Finance has reduced us essentially half of what we asked for already, but I can tell you that if we go lower than that, significant cuts will be made to the programming as already outlined. With that, Mr. Chairman, I turn it back to you.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll have the audience of citizen. Jim Pickett. Yes.
Yes, that would be Jim Pickett, 370 High Road. First, I want to thank all of you. I know many of you are volunteers, and I can empathize. In a previous life, about 15 years ago, I was involved in politics in the town of Rocky Hill. I was deputy mayor there. I was, following that, I was chairman of the Republican Party. I'm here to speak on behalf of Effective School Solutions. I'm very alarmed to see how that was taken out of the budget. And I know one of the clinicians that works for ESS is here. And this is our first year working with them. Our son is on the autism spectrum. He also has anxiety. We tried private school. We moved to Berlin, and he had a very good experience at Griswold School. McGee, despite great efforts by the teachers, and we have a lot of respect and affection for them, he went downhill. He went downhill very rapidly in 8th grade. And everybody tried really hard, but it was tough. And we're very apprehensive when he started high school. But when he started high school and he was in the special ed program with Mrs. Gregaric, who does a wonderful job. But the program wouldn't be effective for our son if it wasn't for the clinicians at ESS. And one of the things that we've done, in addition to meet with the ESS clinicians frequently, we're in contact with them almost daily via email, we also sit in on the parent support groups. And I've listened to these parents, and I really empathize with them because some of them have had their kids in with ESS for 4 years. And I listen to the stories about how these parents are doing, how these kids are doing, and some of them are hanging on by a thread. And if it wasn't for ESS, I don't know where they'd be. You know, there's other alternatives if needs are not met within the town, and you know, those alternatives can be a heck of a lot more expensive than the ESS budget. So I would urge you to do anything you can to keep the ESS fully funded and to take a different approach going forward where it's not taken out of the budget and then maybe you find the money later on. That creates a lot of stress for everyone involved, the parents, the clinicians, the teachers, and certainly the students. So I'd urge you to find the money and fully fund that program. Thank you.
Thank you. Becky Bowman.
My name is Becky Bowman. I live at 214 Deerfield Drive. I've been teaching over at Griswold Elementary School as a special education teacher since 2008. My husband and I were so impressed that we then bought a house 4 months later and decided this is where we're going to raise our children. I have 2 kids that go to Willard School, and we couldn't be happier with the program that they get over there. My concern is that since I've started in education, the needs of students and education has drastically changed. It's more difficult to meet the needs of learners, both academically and their social emotional needs. Looking at where we are in comparison to other towns, it's concerning that we're not giving them what they need. They deserve more, and I think, quite frankly, we need to give them more. If we're looking to develop a well-rounded child, we need to look at the academic supports, but we need to look at the social-emotional supports. We need to look at the fact that they need music, they need art, they need technology, they need a lot in order to keep up, and so that when they go out into the world, that they're ready and they're prepared, and Berlin Public Schools gave them the best that they could give them. So, we can sit here and say we want what's best for our children, and we can say that, but I think we need to prove that, and we need to prove that through, through what we're looking for in the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Rosemary Goodwin.
Hi, Rosemary Goodwin, 43 Elwood Road. I've been employed here in Berlin in the school system for the past 24 years as a speech pathologist at Griswold School. I'm a coworker with Becky. My 3 children have attended the school system here. They've benefited from all there was to offer in Berlin. They've taken AP courses, they've been involved in upbeat, band, plays, musicals, art, sports, you name it, they've done it. These opportunities help them achieve their goals for college. Just like Mr. Tenza said, college is just not about your GPA. It's about the opportunities that you have to give back to your community and be part of your community. Each of them attended the top school of their choice, and they're continuing with those opportunities that they had here. They're continuing with them in college. All the extracurricular activities that started right here in Berlin. My oldest daughter has come full circle. She is now serving as her 2nd year of the head coach of the Berlin High School lacrosse team. She's enjoying it. Another alumni has joined her as the assistant coach, so she's continuing to benefit from the leadership skills and her academics and sports skills and all the opportunities that she had here, and she's giving back to the community. So basically, I'm just saying cuts to the Board of Ed budget and to these programs would rob the current and future students of Berlin, and it would really put them at a disadvantage to the towns and their peers that come from the neighboring towns around us. Also speaking from my role as a speech pathologist, like Becky said, the needs of the students have changed. There's many more students who need social and emotional support as well as academic supports. With cutting some of us and the teachers, it just takes longer for that to happen. The kids fall further behind if we can't get to them early on. So I'm just supporting the budget and asking for these programs to be funded. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Donna Moore.
Donna Moore, 215 Rosewood Lane. I'm here on behalf of the Berlin Public Library. I'm chairperson of the library board. At a time that many refer to us as the digital age, many feel that the libraries are becoming obsolete. I would like to share with you our data for the past year, which shows that's just not true in the town of Berlin. We have over 96,000 items in our collection, consisting of 82,000 books, of which 26,000 are children's books. 93,701 patrons visited our library this past year. There were 165,000 items borrowed from our library, of which 115,000 were books. We had over 22,800 reference questions that were answered by our staff. 12,000 people attended our various programs that we offer. Our 18 internet computers were used over 9,500 times by our town citizens. In addition, we perform other services such as passports, notary service, test proctoring, computer assistance, job search assistance, and after-hours high school exam study times. We offer movies, a number of book clubs, tax preparation assistance, and talks by authors. We offer many programs for both children and adults. This is just a few of the many offerings we provide to our townspeople. When one considers all the quality items and services that we provide to our citizens and the quality of life we add to them in our community, the fact that we are able to do so at just 1.1% of our total municipal budget is simply amazing. I cannot imagine another 1.1% of our municipal budget having such a positive impact on so many of our citizens in the town. Our budget cut is already impacting our streaming services, movies that we show on Fridays, and the purchasing of DVDs and Blu-ray. If our budget is further reduced, the realities are that we could be looking at a reduction in our daily operating hours, or possibly even being forced to close for a day or two during the week. In addition, it will cause a significant reduction in our ability to acquire the materials needed to maintain the level of service that our community has come to expect, as well as a reduction in the number of quality programs and services that we offer for all ages, from infants to the elderly, families, teenagers, the whole gamut of our society in Berlin. This is particularly troubling when you consider we are currently investing 21.5% less in our library than in communities of similar sizes. In closing, I would like to ask that you please keep our budget intact so that we can continue to provide such positive interactions with so many of our townspeople and keep providing such positive quality of life for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Bobby Coughlin.
I live at 259 Alling Street. My husband and I are originally from New York City, and we've been down a couple of times recently in the last month or two, and we go down there and we come back and we say, thank God we live in Berlin. We have a wonderful quality of life here in Berlin, and that does require money to sustain it. I'm particularly interested in sustaining the quality of our education and our library, because we live in a democracy, and a democracy requires a well-educated populace. You can't have that without a good education system and without a library. But there's a whole bunch of other things, as has been presented, that goes into this. And sometimes we talk about excessive government spending. No one wants a tax increase. But sometimes people think about excessive government spending as what I don't need. My children have just pointed out to me that at 66, I am now a senior citizen. This is a bit of a shock, because I don't really see it that way. But I'm going to have different needs as an older person than I did when I was younger. There are things, I don't golf, but I support having a golf course. I do hike. Other people don't hike, so they don't see the importance of our park system, the parks that we have. Everything goes into the quality of life, and we have to have a little bit of a tax increase in order to support that. I'm looking at this and I'm seeing that for a house that's $250,000, an average house apparently, you're talking about less than $1 a day to support the quality of life that we have here in this town. I think this is a budget that shows a great deal of moderation, and I really support maintaining the budget for the Board of Education, for the library, and for everything else for less than $1 a day for the quality of life we have here in Berlin.
Thank you. Paul Kowalski. Oh, there he is.
For 97 Farmington Avenue, and I think the library budget shouldn't be cut because some workers there might be fired, and they're very kind. If there's a budget cut, I think learning might be harder. Like, I could do my homework there and everything. And my brother, he likes to check out DVDs, and they're educational and they're entertaining.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else that would like to speak?
Hi, my name is Erin Pickett, and I'm at 43 Sawmill Drive. And I'm also here in support of the ESS program at Berlin High School, and ask you to reconsider cutting funding to the program. In case you guys don't really know what ESS is, it's essentially an intensive counseling program at Berlin High School where kids who have severe anxiety, depression, autism, and ADHD can receive daily one-on-one therapy with the counselors Drew and Amy at Berlin High School. And they can do that while maintaining their academics at the school, which is incredible. So instead of having to take our kids out of school, go see a counselor, come back, miss a few classes, they can do that in the school, and they get a better trust and sense of the counselors there because they're seeing them every day. So it has made a huge difference for many of the kids in the program, including our son. We're extremely lucky to have ESS at Berlin High School, and we're super happy to be at Berlin High School because of it. This is our son's first year at the high school, and the first year he's been in the ESS program, and I can't tell you what a difference it has made in his emotional well-being and his academic success in school. Before we were, going to regular school, we went to the middle school, which was fantastic. We loved it. But he was having to go outside for, help for counseling and things like that. This year we've been able to keep him in the school and do it at school, and he's really made close friends with Amy and Drew there and has really been able to break through and talk about his problems, and it's made a huge success for him. And also being around other classmates who have the same problem that he sees every day is really helpful for all of them. We attribute his success to the daily contact he has with his counselors, Amy and Drew, the group counseling, the one-on-one counseling we receive through the ESS program. If it wasn't for this program, we wouldn't be able to stay at Berlin in the town we love. He wouldn't be able to interact with the kids he's grown up with all these years, being at Berlin and Griswold and McGee and now Berlin High School. And we certainly wouldn't have made such great progress that we have with our son this year. So we want to thank the ESS program at Berlin High School for having this program. And again, I ask you to please reconsider cutting the program, and please don't cut funding for our children's mental health. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else that would like to speak? Oh,
Hi, my name is Jennifer Needham, and my address is 94 Bannon Lane, Berlin. I am also the head of Children's and Teen Services at the Berlin Peck Memorial Library. My parents moved here when I was very young because they wanted to raise their children in a town that supported their development and cared about their future. I'm speaking today because as a professional that works daily with the children and families of Berlin, I'm in a unique position to see firsthand the lasting impact Berlin Peck Memorial Library and its staff make in the lives of our community members, particularly our children. A large and growing body of research has proven that the greatest amount of brain growth occurs between birth and age 5. In contrast, the majority of our investments are made in the traditional education years of K through 12, which begin at age 5. Early literacy development has a strong correlation with children's future academic achievement. In fact, according to the National Commission on Reading, the single most significant factor influencing a child's early educational success is an introduction to books and being read at home prior to beginning school. And I'm talking not about ebooks or digital books. I'm talking about physical books that children can hold in their hands. The average children's picture book right now is approximately $18.68. So many families in this town can't afford to purchase the large number of books required to create a print-rich environment. Who can provide these books to families and for free? The public library can, but only if we have the funding to do so. Furthermore, research has shown that children who've been exposed to library story times and preschool programs show a greater number of emergent literacy behaviors and pre-reading skills essential for success in school. We do far more than read and sing and have fun in story time. We create purposely planned, developmentally appropriate programs that are designed to promote early literacy, social, and school readiness. They also happen to be fun and free to the public. The Berlin Peck Memorial Library is one of the only places in town that provides access to these essential, free, early literacy experiences through our story times, our programs, our early literacy initiatives like 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten, books and other materials like early literacy backpacks, games, launch pads, and our play area. The average attendance at our story times is 65 people per program. We're one of the largest numbers in terms of our program attendance for our story times in the entire area. I invite the town council members to attend one of our story times and see for yourselves how we make a difference each and every day. We serve children from birth to age 18. We collaborate with the school system every summer to provide a summer learning experience that prevents the summer slide so that children go back to school in the fall ready to learn. We play an increasingly important role as a community gathering space. On any given day, the children's department is filled with children, parents, grandparents, and other caregivers who have come to socialize and play in a welcoming, safe space. We are a lifeline, a free, inclusive, and welcoming community hub that helps the children and families of Berlin thrive. We equip children with lifelong learning skills, enabling them to participate and contribute to the town. We encourage children to become confident and competent people, and through a library card, we give children their first experience of being a citizen in their own right. We empower parents, grandparents, and caregivers by providing them with resources and guidance. The library's budget is a very small 1.1% of the town total, but we make a very large impact on taxpayers and their children. Yet we struggle to keep up with the many changes in technology, rising costs in books and other materials, staff and budget shortages, and a growing demand from our community for more services. As community leaders, I ask you to please make an investment in the future of our children by making a commitment to the Berlin Peck Memorial Library. Thank you very much.
I just want everybody to know we didn't cut the library's budget. We kept it intact. I just wanted everybody to know that. Anybody else? Yes.
Joanne Stetson, 188 Stony Mill Lane. I am a Democratic town councilor in this town, but I am also a parent. And I was contacted today by a friend of mine whose daughter benefited from the ESS program, and she asked me if it was budgeted for. And I told her yes. And as a result, she said, oh, well, then I won't have to come tonight, and my daughter won't have to speak about the harrowing experiences that she has had. She attempted to take her own life on a couple of occasions and was very candid about this in the past. Without ESS, I'm not so sure that this young woman would have survived. And I'm at a loss as to how this program could be cut. You can't put a price tag on a kid's mental health. So I'm really, really concerned, really dismayed, disappointed that I didn't know it was cut last night, and upset that she can't be here tonight to share how important this program is to her. Additionally, I have 3 grown kids that came through this school system. I have a daughter who's a transition counselor and works with at-risk children at Platt High School in Meriden. I have a son who actually works for the Board of Ed as a digital media specialist. And I have a 21-year-old who is, as we speak, in a car on his way to LA to try to establish a career as a screenwriter and a producer. And I would argue that we have to continue to provide funding, and excellent funding for education, because all three of them are successful. My son has argued that the program of studies here at the high school was very competitive, even with kids that he went to DePaul University with that were privately schooled. So I'm very disturbed to hear about some of the cuts to the Board of Ed and to ESS. And I would urge you to fund adequately. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Oh, okay, Mr. Jordner.
Fred Jortner, 76 Schultz Road. The education system, any education system, is the lifeblood of any community. It helps prepare young men and women to go out into the world and make their mark. It helps maintain and, in a lot of cases, increase property values. Now, I'm retired, I'm a grandfather, and I certainly don't want to pay any more taxes more than anybody else. But my kids went through the school system, and they availed themselves of all the opportunities. They played sports and participated in extracurricular activities. And I would hate to think that the kids of today or the kids of tomorrow would not have those same opportunities. So I hope we could stop this cycle of inadequate funding going forward. And just let's not give the Board of Education everything they want, but certainly let's give them everything they need. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Okay, thank you for coming. And we're going to take the budget and give it to the council next week, so thank you for coming.